different things to different people. And to some she was Joanne, to others she was Aunt Joanne, to others she was Jody. To me, she was just known as Mom. My mother was born on August 6, 1945. At least that's what she told me. And she said that it was the day that the first atomic bomb was dropped on a civilian population. And that, I sometimes thought, because my mom had mentioned this to me, that she was born on a day, and you think about all that energy that was released at that time, perhaps that's what made her a little bit different, and she was born right at the beginning of the atomic age. It seems to me that my mother was a little different, and she was certainly a little bit unique. In a world where many people are concerned with the 9 to 5 and keeping up with the Joneses, it seems that my mom lived her life the way she wanted to, as much as she possibly could, attempting to live out freedom, the American dream, and self-determination as she saw fit. It certainly wasn't perfect, but my mother did her best to make her way in life as an independent woman with 2 children. In the 1960s, she started her very own business in Los Angeles and Dallas called Children's Guides and Tours of America. She employed psychology students from universities to take care of children whose parents were in town attending conventions. At the time, it was a fairly big endeavor for a 23-year-old woman attempting to play the role of entrepreneur. I think my mother always had an entrepreneurial spirit throughout her life. My mother had many successes and failures, especially failures. But my mother tried, and my mother always persisted. My mother loved the world. My mother was fortunate enough to live where she wanted to. For a while, she lived in Rome, Cabo San Lucas, and New York City. I knew my mother loved Native American culture, but she also loved aspects of all cultures. She was especially fond of Mediterranean and Italian culture. At one point, she asked me about going to Nepal and East Asia. She wanted to see that part of the world too. When I was a boy, she was trying to get me and my brother Doug to be raised in Baja. That was the dream. Whether we like it or not, my mother was a complex person and went down fighting. My mother did not go gently into that good night. My mother just wanted to be free, always wanted to be free, and wouldn't settle for anything less. The times I enjoyed with my mother was when, for example, we lived in New York. She would come whenever she could to our Little League baseball games. All the kids on the team loved her. My mother loved baseball. She took me to my first baseball game, a Dodger game at Chavez Ravine back in August of 1968. They were playing Pittsburgh. I can still remember that. My mother loved the beach. Also, another time I enjoyed, we just sang Amazing Grace. Well, my mother had a recorder and I had a cornet, and back in 2002, we went to the Whittier Hills and we played Amazing Grace over the graves of Jack Bostwick, Dora Reynolds, and my great-grandmother Lottie. And we did pretty good. We practiced till we got it right. That to me was a significant moment in our lives. Another event was when my mother took care of her partner's 85-year-old mother when we lived in New Jersey. My mother's, I'll say, her partner Jack, the mother was living in a nursing home and she didn't want to die in a nursing home, and she came to live with us for 6 months. And the story is that, how should I say this? Jack said often that my mother was just unbelievably caring. And my mother, he said that his mother didn't want to die in a nursing home, but at home with her sons. And my stepfather said that the day before his mother died, she had said to him that she was as happy as she could ever be and was happy and ready to go on to the other side. And the next day, that is exactly what happened. She was able to die in the home of her son. My stepfather would say from time to time that what my mother did was the greatest thing anyone could have done for him, and to completely care for someone so that they felt so much complete fulfillment in this life that they would be content in moving on into the next. I wish I could have done the same for my mother. Unfortunately, I wasn't. Frankly, my mother was someone whom I worried about every time I thought about her. I always worried about my mother. I've been told that I am my mother's son. I suppose this is true, yet my mother and I also had many, many differences. However, one thing my mother did give me was a nurturing, creative spirit that I have tried to use whenever I try to express myself artistically. Events in life do not always have closure, nor reconciliation, nor resolve, nor satisfaction. For some it does, and for others we can only do the best with what we have and don't have. It is what it is. May my mother's soul and spirit radiate forever into the cosmos in eternity. May my mother's soul reach so far out into infinity that it comes back again in the next life. I hope I get to be with her again in the great wheel of reincarnation, and the next time karma will be good for both of us, and we won't repeat the mistakes that we both made ever again. Although my mother made mistakes, I regretfully did too. When I was I want to go back to that later, but it was my mother who informed me about Les Paul, about Elvis Presley, Les Paul and Mary Ford, of Louis Prima and Keely Smith. It was my mother who told me about New Orleans punch and bounce, its jazz music, about its traditions of ragtime and syncopation. My mother loved to read, and she read a lot. She would say from time to time that she was the last one born, and she was the baby of the family. Well, now that she's up in heaven, I'm sure she still wants her brothers and sister to take care of her there too. One of the great things my mother did when I was a little boy was every night when I went to bed, my mother would sing me a lullaby. And I'd like to read that lullaby to you because I don't know where it came from, but to me, it's one of the greatest moments I ever had with my mother. What she would sing to me is this. Where is it? Okay, all the little birds have gone in their nest to sleep, and out in folds I cannot see sleep the woolly sheep. All the flowers that grow by day, pink and blue and white, are just as safe in darkest dark as in the brightest light. So that's my eulogy. You're very welcome. Now what should I do?
I don't know. Let's look at the...
Okay.